Okay. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this afternoon's lesson. If you're online, can I see you signifying your presence? I have Rakib, Rakib, Daniel, Aisha Ibrahim. Hello, Daniel, what's your surname? Hello, Aisha and Rakib. Okay. I'm not sure if Daniel was supposed to be in this class. Hello, Rakib. I think this is your first online class. Hello, Rakib. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, how are you doing?
I'm fine.
All right. Am I correct when I say this is your first class, first online class?
No, I'm not actually going to be in this class.
Okay. What class are you supposed to be?
My class just finished.
Don't do literature, yeah. So, yeah. You said your class?
I don't do literature. My class just finished.
Okay, all right. All right, no problem. So I think you should have another lesson in a few minutes time.
Okay, sir.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Take care. Hello? All right, we're going to run through all that we've done so far. We are still on Neo Shunda Ray's poem Niligan Iled, and we'll be running off our work on the poem this afternoon. Now, we remember that the poem is about the leadership tussle or crisis within the animal kingdom or within a group of animals, and several of the animals put forward themselves to be suitable leaders of the group or the rest of the animals. You have the lion, the antelope, the hyena, the giraffe, the zebra, the elephant, the warthog, and even the rhino, all laying claim to be the appropriate leader of the others based on, for instance, the lion feels is right. The hyena, for instance, feels that the crown he's okay. All right, Miriam, welcome. All right, who else is here? I can see. All right, so yes, Miriam, can you give us a summary of the poem? I was going to do that, but help us with it, please. How would you summarize the poem? Yes. Okay. Okay. Miriam said the lion is the head of the pack and the other animals like his servants. Okay. That's a good one. Now, but that's the idea we get if we try to see the situation through the eyes of the lion. The lion feels it's actually his right to lead the other animals. Many of us grew up with different kinds of fables or animal stories, and in almost every one of them, the lion is regarded as the king. We all know of the Lion King. The lion is seen as the king of the animals or the king of the jungle, whichever way you want to look at it. But this poem is trying to the poet is trying to call our attention to the fact that no single person has the right to lead, and he represents that by using different animals. The lion, on his own part, feels it's his right, just as many of us automatically believe that the lion is the head or the ruler of other animals. If I ask you why, you could say, okay, maybe because of how majestic the lion walks, or because the lion is brave and courageous and all whatnot. So let's say the lion is aware of all of those attributes, and it is that awareness that makes him stake his claim. Now, when you stake your claim to something, you just want to act based on that right, or you want to say that that privilege or that opportunity is your right. So, if for instance, you're talking about being a prefect or a class captain, there could be something or some reason that makes you feel that it's your right to be the class captain. Maybe you've been a class captain since just as well, and you feel it should continue that way. The lion could have had such thoughts, but other animals had completely different ideas. As you can see in line 3, have the antelopes, remembering how ferocious the pounds of the lion's paws can be. Many of us would have seen documentaries or movies about how different animals, like the lion, how they hunt, and we are able to understand how the antelopes would feel. Okay, Miriam has given us a more comprehensive answer. Okay, very good. I think the others on the group can see what she has done, and you can make your own contributions if you wish. Okay, very good. Hello, Rahimat, you can hear. Check your um, speaker or your audio settings. If there's anyone who shouldn't be in this class, I think you should go to where your class is hold in the appropriate room, else you'd be missing out on something that is actually meant for you. And who is me? Your name cannot be me. Okay, yes, I know you want, but there should be a class going on for you. I don't know what subject you'll be having now, but you should be having a class now. So for the others who are actually taking literature in English, would continue. Now, we all read the poem, I believe. Aisha Miriam, please cross-check. Please cross-check. Now, there was someone who was in one of our previous classes and she didn't know that her own class was going on. So cross-check if you don't have, to be sure that you don't have another class. I'm not sure if it's chemistry or something you're supposed to have at this time. But please cross-check so that you don't end up losing out even though we are online. And we examined the poet's background and we're able to see how the poet's experiences have influenced his work. For instance, a whole lot of the poems that Neo Shonari has written has to do with his experiences as a Nigerian, as an African in Nigeria and a Yoruba man. So if you are familiar with some Yoruba mythological concepts or some aspects of African culture, the African culture, you would see such in his poems and even in his other works or his essays. And he always makes reference to animals, aspects of nature, issues that a typical African would very easily relate with. In the last class, we looked at the structure of the poem. It's right there on the screen. I hope everyone can see it. And there are some questions, and I explained how it is the poem is a 12 stanza couplet. The brief exercise we had before the beginning of the last lesson helped us understand that a couplet is a poem, or rather a poem or stanza of 2 lines. Sometimes they rhyme, other times they don't. In The Leader and the Led, you have 12 stanzas. Each stanza is made up of 2 lines. And the significance of the poem being written in couplets is seen when you consider the theme. When you consider the themes and we look at one of the literary or poetic devices, we're going to do more on that. Now, only about 2 of you submitted your assignment. I think I'll kick off more specifically from there. Now, the rest of you, I'd like to know very briefly why you didn't submit your assignment. Yes. For those of you who are in class now. Okay, I'm trying to drop the name. Only 2 of you. I think Zainab, if I remember now, and Rahimat. Yes, Zainab, yeah, Zainab, you did, yeah. So, and I've graded your work. It was a good attempt, very good attempt. Same with Rahimat. Those were the only 2 that submitted theirs before the deadline I gave. Now for the others, I don't know why, but you don't have any excuse. I'm going to give you another assignment after today's lesson and expect that you do justice to that. Yeah. Meanwhile, just know that you've lost the opportunity to earn whatever marks that are attached to the assignment, the last assignment. So I'll give a few minutes for you to jot or write what is on the slide. The previous week we looked at the structure and the themes, but we weren't able to really take down notes. So I'll give you a few minutes for you to write the notes on the structure and the themes of the poem, The Leader and the Led. In the meantime, if there are any questions from the previous lessons, you can ask via the chats. Okay. So let me know as soon as you're done writing. You have a minute more for this particular slide. My email address is samolorundari@gmail.com. That's where you can send your assignments to. All right, so we'll move on to the themes in the poem. We considered some of them. It's also one of the assignments. Okay. All right, someone is saying that she sent her assignment to the NTIC. Okay, I'll check immediately after this lesson. At the last time I checked, there are no literature in English assignment submitted there. Okay. All right, so the theme of leadership is quite explanatory. From the title, you already have an idea that the poem would be exploring such a theme. The poem, in essence, is about leadership and what it takes to be a leader, the necessary qualities of a leader. Now, the poet uses the interaction among certain animals to highlight the issue of leadership by comparing the desire to rule with the ability to rule. For example, in line 1, the lion sees leadership as his right, but the antelopes recall the ferocious pounds of his paws and disqualify him on that basis. In the same way, other animals come forward and their claims to leadership are also counted. The solution to the leadership tussle is a hybrid of habits. Now, it's good for me to mention before I explain the second theme is that in literature, as many of you would know, it's when you're explaining or analyzing the text by explaining the themes and your own idea of what it's about, it's hard for you to be wrong. All you have to do is to back up your idea or your explanation with suitable evidence from the text. So you could actually have a theme that I haven't mentioned here, or you describe a similar thing using a different heading. The important thing is to relate it to the poem and show how that poem is reflected, that theme rather is reflected in the poem. Similar to the poem, the theme of leadership is that of power tussle or the quest for leadership. Now, this is more specific than just the theme of leadership. There's that quest on that or that desire to lead, and you find it by the way the poet places side by side the different qualities of the various animals. So you have the hyena versus the impala. You have the zebra talking about his right to lead, and other animals say his stripes are so confusing that he won't make for a good leader. They talk about the duplicity of his stripes. You have the warthog and the rhino, and all of these animals are in that rush, that um, craze, if you put it that way, that excitement to become the leader. Another theme is that of perfection versus imperfection. Each of the animals that indicate their interest to lead in the poem feel that they are the best fits. They feel that there's nothing wrong with their desire to lead and that other animals should just go along with their decision or their own desire or will to lead. In the poem, we see different aspects of the characters of the animals mentioned being reflected or highlighted. We can assume that these animals may not have even considered such characteristics or qualities to be flawed or to be disadvantages. For instance, the hyena has a ravenous appetite. If you've seen videos of hyenas feeding, it is not a palatable sight. They would hunt animals or feed on leftover of other animals' meals, or even um, dead animals, and they do it in such a rush that other animals are even afraid of that sight. And hyenas eat a whole lot more than their size. So the impalas, which for this is important to note, is one of the preys of the hyena. So they're in a gathering. The hyenas say, "Oh, the hyena say the crown is made for him." That's the line 5. Line 6, the impala shudders. The impalas are afraid that the hyena can even suggest that he be made king. They begin to imagine what will happen if the hyena is king, because they can very well understand how lethal or deadly his appetite is. Now the giraffe, okay, beautiful giraffe, innocent giraffe, comes up and wants to be the king, but other animals say his eyes are too far from the ground. Now, you take that literally and you wonder if the fact that the giraffe has a long neck should be enough to disqualify him. On a deeper level, it could mean that because his head is usually way in the trees above the heads of other animals, it's difficult for him to know what is going on with animals that are much smaller or that are not as tall as he is. The elephant comes in all of his might, and that very thing that is supposed to be an advantage for the elephant is used as a disadvantage um, to his claim to be a leader. So the theme of perfection versus imperfection is a reminder that no one is perfect. Every leader should be willing to improve. First, should understand that he's not perfect or she's not perfect, and must always be willing to improve himself or herself. Next is the theme of nature. It's obvious from the very first line of the poem that the poem talks about nature or the animal kingdom. You have the mention of plants, of animals, of scenes in nature. In stanza 13, that's lines 21 and 22, you 22 especially, have the mention of the river and a lake. So in every line of the poem, there's something that reminds you of nature. We'll refer to this when we look at the poetic devices. Another important thing to note is the theme of balance. This is made more clear by the use of antithesis. If you thought about the assignment, or if you did it, you would have an idea of what I'm talking about. So you have a lot of contrasting done in some lines of the poem. You have in the stanzas more particularly. So the first line of the stanza, you have one animal and its characteristic. In the second line of that stanza, you have a contrasting animal or a contrasting characteristic or quality. In stanzas 12, you find that. So you have a little bit of a lion, a little bit of a lamb. Tough like a tiger, compassionate like a doe, transparent like a river, mischievous like a lake. So more like a little to the left and a little to the right. The idea is that there should be a balance in whatever one is doing. A leader, a true leader, should be able to be firm but yet flexible, to be tough and also gentle and compassionate, not necessarily being two different things at the same time, but knowing when to be gentle, when to be harsh, when to be transparent or easy to read, and when to also be mysterious. Are we all together? Now we're going to move on to the literary devices. I want you all to note this. This was the second question in the assignment I gave to the last time. Only a few of you were submitted. I was only able to mark 2 of them. Those are the 2 that I saw. Those are submitted to my email. Now, I'll give you 5 minutes to note the poetic devices that are highlighted in the poem. For some of them, I included brief descriptions of the particular poetic devices. For instance, imagery, that for me is number 1. In all of the poem, what stands out is the mental images or pictures that you are able to get based on the words that the writer or the poet has used. You have mention of animals, the behavior of animals, the river, the lake, all of the use of those words, those adjectives, help you as the reader or the audience to imagine, as if you're watching a movie, what the poet is talking about. So in your mind, you can imagine a gathering, for instance, in any open space in the middle of the forest, and the animals are having a discussion or an argument about who is more appropriate to whom the leader should be. One animal is saying he is the best fit, another one disagrees, and it's easy for you to do that because of the kind of words used. So you have several examples of such. You have some in line 6, line 16, and line 10. I hope you're all following. A brief explanation of the use of imagery is put in brackets for you. Now, there are different kinds of imagery. We will not go into them at this point. But imagery is the use of words or expressions to create mental pictures that readers can visualize, can perceive, and so that means that you can see, that you can smell, you can hear, you can touch, and so on. So you could actually be reading a poem and you feel as if you are in the poem. How that is possible is dependent on the kind of descriptive words that the poet uses. You also find imagery in drama and also prose. So if a particular word helps you to imagine how an animal looks like or helps you to see something, that is an example of visual imagery. If the use of an expression, a word, helps you to imagine how something smells, if it evokes your sense of smell, that is olfactory imagery. If it has to do with your sense of taste, that would be gustatory. If it has to do with your sense of touch, probably you're already having goosebumps and you feel the hairs on your hand or your neck standing, and you are imagining, for instance, how hot or cold the weather is, or an object in the poem or in the text is, then that is tactile. Or if the word is a shape, for instance, maybe round or rectangular, as in a phone or a table or a ball, for instance. Those words help you imagine the shape of the object or how they would feel if you were to touch them. So that has to do with tactile imagery. Moving on to simile. You are all familiar with simile. If there are any questions regarding the poetic devices as I go on, you can just indicate and ask me in the group chat. So Rahimat, Yasura, Zainab, Alex. Is Alex in this class? All right, good. We'll move on. If you have questions, please do ask. Now, simile is just making comparisons using like or as, the words like or as. You have a couple of them in the poem and they are highlighted on the slide for you. I hope you are still jotting as you listen. Line 6, you have like a snake without a head. This can also be an instance of imagery because you, even though the thrashing around of the park is compared to how a snake would thrash around without his head when his head is cut off, you can also imagine the animal, the snake, being killed or being without a head. That is also the use of imagery. So sometimes a particular expression or line of a poem could be used to explain more than one poetic device. Okay, Zainab just asked the question, how do you use a metaphor in a poem? All right. Now, it's the same way you would use a metaphor in any other way, everyday speech, or if it's in prose or in drama. Now, but what you should note is that there are different kinds of metaphors. The more common metaphor is what some people call the direct metaphor, where you have, excuse me, instead of saying, for instance, Ade is a tiger or Bayo is a tiger, you is like a tiger rather. You just say Bayo is a tiger. Using that comparison without like or as makes it a metaphor. So instead of saying someone is cunning or is sly, you just say that man is a fox. Now, what you're saying is he behaves in the way a fox behaves. We generally agree that the fox is sly. So when you say the man is a fox, you are simply saying that the man is sly or tricky. If you say Shade is a snail, you are simply saying Shade is as sluggish as a snail. What you are doing is you are comparing the quality or characteristic of being sluggish, which the snail is known for, to how Shade behaves. So talking about sluggishness as a character or quality, if you say Shade is walking like a snail or is behaving like a snail or Shade is like a snail, that is simile. Shade is a snail, that is metaphor. Is that understood? Now that is one kind of the use of metaphor. Now the other one is the one you have on the slide. Now you can use an idea or a poem or a story to represent something else. It could be another idea or another issue. Now, when you use that first poem or story to represent something else, that story or poem is a metaphor. Now, the poem, The Leader and the Led, is actually talking about the society, any democratic society, for instance. You can say the African society or the Nigerian society, whichever one works. So the way candidates in an election and the electorate go about the whole electoral process is just like what you have in the poem. So reading the poem helps you to identify certain things that happen when the elections are about to begin, before, during, and after elections. So we can, based on that, say that the poem is a metaphor of the human society, or the metaphor of a democratic society, or is a metaphor of the democratic process, because the poem represents a democratic process or a democratic society. I hope that's clear enough to Zainab and others that may have a similar question. If you need me to explain further, let me know. So that's how you use metaphor in a poem. Now, okay, to add to what I've said, you simply look out for, or you pick two objects that have similar characteristics. So if you want to talk about the size of something or someone has a big stature, for instance, it would not be appropriate to compare such a person to, let's say, a rabbit, because the rabbit is not known for its size. So you would be comparing such person, especially when the person has a big size and is strong, to an elephant, for instance. So that's an addition to how you can use a metaphor. Are we all good with the previous slide? All right, good. You're welcome. Now, just remind you that you should actually be taking notes and jot down what you have before you. Next is repetition. Next is repetition. It's self-explanatory. The occurrence of certain words or phrases in a poem or in any work. Repetition from repeat. In the poem The Leader and the Led, you have certain words that are repeated, quite obvious. You have the word park repeated in lines 2, 10, and 15. You have the word lead in lines 9 and 24. In line 9, you have when the zebra says it is right to lead. In line 24, you have followers mindful of their right to lead. Also, the phrase a little bit of is repeated in lines 19 and 20. That's stanza 12. A little bit of a lion, a little bit of a lamb. Now, there's something that repetition helps to achieve. The same thing that repetition does in real life, even in class. You hear something repeated to you several times, repeated to you, and it's easier to remember. It's harder to forget. So when you read a poem and certain expressions or words are repeated, it helps you to take note of the idea that that expression is trying to convey to you. So you have the words park and lead being repeated. When you come across that word or those words the second and for park the third time, you are able to understand that we are dealing with a group of animals who need to be led or who want to be led and some who need to be led. The next one is symbolism. You all know what a symbol is? A symbol is any object or thing or idea that represents something else. So when you use words to represent ideas or qualities in literature, that is symbolism. So in the poem, you have the forest sage in line 18. It comes in to bring a form of resolution to the chaos that is, or the conflict that is brewing up in the poem. The animals were left to go, and I don't think they would have been able to arrive at a conclusion or arrive at a solution. Each animal wants to be the leader and so on. But the forest sage comes up. In our previous lessons, some of you gave answers as to who the sage is or what the word sage means. So a sage is a wise person, an experienced individual. So the forest sage, and someone suggested that that could be the owl. Well, we don't have any pointer to that, but the owl is usually used as a symbol of wisdom or knowledge. So the forest sage comes up and gives a solution. Our need calls for a hybrid of habits, meaning the solution we need is to find a way to put together several characteristics, several qualities, several of the qualities you mentioned. If we can put them together, then we'll have an ideal leader. Now, the forest sage could also be seen as the voice of the poet. Call it in the poem here, in the slide, the poet's persona. So it's like it's just seen as the poet trying to speak directly to us or to the society. The next poetic device highlighted for you is alliteration. Alliteration is the repetition of initial consonant sounds of words. So you have the H sound or ha. So you have hybrid of habits in line 17. The F sound in line 8, far from the ground. You also have pounds of his paws and park points, both in 4 and line 10 respectively. And finally is antithesis. I made reference to this earlier this afternoon. Now, antithesis is the use of contrast by placing together statements that have contrasting or opposing ideas. Now, please do not confuse this with oxymoron. I hope you're all together. Many students confuse oxymoron with antithesis. They are similar, but they're similar in the sense that they are both used to show contrast. But oxymoron deals with words, while antithesis deals with statements or sentences or phrases. So you have oxymoron, for instance, bittersweet, loud silence. Antithesis is what you have in stanzas 3, stanza 10, and so on. So there you have it. Your assignment is what you have on the screen. I've already sent my email address to you, and you can send it to the SS2 NTIC email address. If there are no questions, we'll be running off now. Yes, Rahimat, what's the question? Rahimat, Zainab, Alex, Yesirat.